Rain patters softly against tall glass windows. The faint hum of old fluorescent lights fills the silence. What happens in libraries after midnight? Maya had only been the night shift librarian for 3 days. She thought staying awake would be the hardest part. She was wrong. The smell of aged paper clung to the air. Somewhere between the distant creak of wooden shelves and the whisper of turning pages, she realized she wasn't alone. Tonight's story is best told in shadows. So, dim your lights, let the candlelight flicker, and listen closely. The library after hours is nothing like the library by day. By daylight, the air hums with quiet activity, soft footsteps, the rustle of pages, the faint beeps of checkout scanners. But now it's an ocean of silence. Maya moved slowly through the empty corridors, her flats clicking softly on the polished floor. The smell of old paper and leather bindings hung heavy in the air, like the past itself hadn't left. Rows of towering shelves stretched into shadows, each one casting long, dark stripes across the carpet. She'd worked in libraries for 5 years, but this was her first midnight shift. She'd imagined boredom would be her worst enemy. Fighting sleep, sipping lukewarm tea, flipping through the same paperback just to keep her eyes open. But boredom never came. Half an hour into her shift, she found something strange on the returns cart. Something she didn't remember being checked out. A small, deep blue book. No title on the spine. No author's name. The cover was worn but smooth, as if it had been handled lovingly over decades. She picked it up, the pages whispering faintly against each other. And that's when she heard it. Footsteps, soft, deliberate, coming from the children's section. Maya froze, hand still hovering over the blue book. She glanced toward the far end of the library. The children's section sat tucked in a corner, its tiny chairs and bright rugs now swallowed by shadow. It was supposed to be locked, empty. She told herself it was nothing, a building settling, maybe the old HVAC kicking on. But as she stepped away from the returns cart, the sound came again. And this time she swore she heard it whisper. She tightened her cardigan around her shoulders and walked slowly toward the sound. The further she went, the more the creaks underfoot began to sound like something else, like voices she couldn't quite make out. The children's section was ahead now. Small tables stood like forgotten toys in the gloom. She rounded the corner slowly, her breath held, and then she saw them. 3 figures stood in the dim light filtering through the tall windows. A woman in a faded 1940s dress sat in the storytime chair, her hair pinned neatly, her face pale and soft in the moonlight. Beside her, 2 children, 1 boy, 1 girl, sat cross-legged on the carpet, their faces turned up toward her. And the woman was reading. Maya didn't move. She didn't speak. She just listened. The words the woman read were clear, though her voice was thin and distant, as though coming from the other side of a dream. And the book she was holding, the one she was reading from, was the same deep blue book Maya had just found. What would you do? Maya thought. If you saw something like this, would you run? Call out? She stayed, because something in the woman's voice rooted her to the floor. And then the words stopped being strange. They started being familiar. Too familiar. The woman was reading about Maya, her job, her apartment, even the chipped mug she used every morning for tea. Details no one could know. Details she had never told anyone. Maya's throat went dry. She stepped forward, the sound of her shoe on the carpet making the woman's head turn. That's when she heard it. We've been waiting for you, Maya. Her name, spoken by someone who shouldn't have known it. The woman closed the book gently and rested her hand on its cover. You're not the first night librarian, she said softly, and you won't be the last. Maya's pulse pounded in her ears. Something in the air shifted, a low, electric hum, like the space between 2 lightning strikes. The woman held out the blue book toward her. Maya hesitated, then took it. It fell open naturally, as though the spine had been cracked in exactly that spot countless times before. She looked down and saw her own handwriting filling the page. Words she had never written. Maya stood frozen, staring at the page, her own handwriting curling across it in ink she didn't remember touching. Her breath trembled, but something inside her softened. The tension in the room shifted, like a storm cloud slowly drifting away to reveal sunlight. The woman in the 1940s dress smiled faintly. Not a haunting smile, but the kind you give someone when you've been waiting a very long time for them to understand. "This place," the woman said, resting her hand gently on the arm of the chair, "is more than shelves and paper. It remembers. It keeps." Maya glanced down at the blue book again. The words on the page described a rainy Tuesday, years ago, when she was 13, when she'd come to this library after school and found a book about a girl her age who built a raft and sailed away to somewhere safe. She remembered curling up in the farthest corner, reading it cover to cover, and feeling lighter. "This library," the woman continued, "collects more than just books, keeps the moments when someone found comfort here. Every soul who has ever walked in and found exactly what they needed leaves a story behind." At that, the two children looked up at Maya. Their eyes were bright, but soft. Eyes that didn't just see her, but seemed to know her. "They're echoes," the woman said. "Not ghosts to be feared, but memories too cherished to fade." Maya's heartbeat slowed, her grip on the book loosening. She noticed the woman's hands now, delicate, lined with time. The faint scent of lavender drifted from her. "You?" Maya asked quietly. "What's your story?" The woman's gaze grew distant, like she was looking through the library walls and back into another decade. "In 1942, I read here to children who had been sent away from the cities. They'd lost homes, parents, and sometimes hope. We read until the bombs stopped falling, sometimes until they fell asleep." One of the children beside her leaned against her arm. The woman's smile deepened. "The library remembered them, and me. We became part of it. Now we help keep the stories alive." Maya's eyes dropped to the blue book again. The ink shifted, new words curling onto the page as if an invisible pen was writing them. The line read, "Tonight, the night librarian learns the truth." Her throat caught. "This book, it's not magic that haunts," she whispered. "No," the woman replied. "It's magic that connects, across years, across lives. Every night librarian adds their chapter, a record of someone finding the right words at the right time." Maya's pulse steadied as she realized she'd been part of this place far longer than she knew. "I used to come here," she said slowly, "since I was 7. My mom would leave me in the reading nook by the window while she ran errands. I thought it was just a library." The woman's eyes softened. "And do you remember the first book you loved?" Maya did. The memory slid into her mind like the turning of a familiar page. A slim paperback about a little girl who lived above a bakery, who snuck downstairs at night to read by the warmth of the ovens. The woman rose from her chair, walked to a nearby shelf, and slid out a worn book with a peeling spine. She opened it to the first page. There, in faded pencil, was the little girl's name, written decades ago. And Maya realized it was hers, her own childish handwriting from a lifetime ago. The circle had always been closed. She just hadn't seen it. The woman placed the book in Maya's hands. "Now," she said gently, "it's your turn to keep the light on." The rain outside eased into a soft mist. Somewhere in the stacks, a page turned, as if the library itself was listening. Maya stood in the center of the quiet children's section, the blue book still warm in her hands. The woman and the two children faded slowly, not vanishing, but dissolving into the very air, as if they'd been drawn back into the pages. The silence that followed was not the kind that made her uneasy anymore. It was full. She ran her fingers along the spine of the book. She understood now. She wasn't trapped here, and this wasn't a test she could pass or fail. She'd been chosen. The night librarian's role wasn't about guarding the doors or counting the returns. It was about finding the right story for the right soul, whether that soul was sitting across from her in the present or echoing in from the past. Every night, she would walk the aisles, fingertips brushing the covers, listening for that subtle hum the books gave off when they were waiting for someone. Sometimes, she might see visitors, echoes who came to hear a passage again, to relive the moment a story saved them. Other nights, she'd be alone. But even in the stillness, the library would breathe around her, alive with the quiet weight of 1,000 untold tales. By 18 minutes in, she sat at the large oak desk near the entrance, her cardigan pulled close, a steaming mug of tea beside her. The rain had stopped, but droplets still clung to the tall windows, blurring the orange glow of the streetlights outside. She looked up at the towering shelves and realized she wasn't just working in a building. She was guarding something precious, something alive. A few minutes before the end of her shift, she closed the blue book gently and placed it on the desk. She knew it would vanish before morning, back into whatever place it waited when it wasn't needed. The final understanding settled deep in her chest. Being the Night Librarian wasn't a job title. It was a calling, and for the first time in her life, Maya realized she had been answering it for years without knowing. Every time she'd led someone to a book that made them feel seen, every time she'd returned to the shelves herself when the world felt too heavy. She smiled softly, turning off the desk lamp one by one until only the warmest pool of light remained. Then she whispered into the quiet, "The library is open." The air seemed to hum back in agreement. Somewhere, all over the world, there are people like Maya, quiet guardians who keep stories safe, holding them until the right heart comes along to receive them. And maybe, just maybe, you've already met one without knowing it. Before you go, drop in the comment section where you are watching from and what time it is. Good night.